Watercolor is kind of a mysterious medium, and it seems really fragile. But in fact, it's not. Once it's painted on paper and dried, unless I spill a bunch of water on here, it's not going anywhere. And I got a bunch of questions about how to seal the watercolor ornaments that I showed the other day, and that video is actually from a year ago, which I think will allow me to demonstrate how not fragile this is. Because I kept the ornaments, and this is how I stored them. You can see one right here. Honestly, it looks exactly the same. There's a couple more in here. Also looks just as good. When I pack these back up at the end of the season, I'll store them like that. I'm gonna take a closer look at these to see if there is actually any damage. And I'm not seeing any. That being said, I do understand the concern about wanting to seal something like this. Because if you're using a real life tree and you're watering it and this is hanging anywhere near where you're watering, there's potential for these to get wet. So what could we use to seal one of these? Traditional ways of varnishing or spray varnishes or even something like hairspray, which is often used as a fixative for different types of work, are not going to be the answer. All of these products contain a decent amount of water in their formulas. Therefore, if you applied any of these to these in the process of attempting to protect them from water, we'd be exposing them to water. We'd lose any crisp lines, the paint's gonna smudge around a little bit, you're gonna lose a lot of details, so it's not really worth it to try to finish it with one of these. The only reliable way I have found to seal watercolor is with a wax medium. I'm sure there are other ways. I've tested quite a few and I got smudging and running in everything except for this Dorland's wax medium. To apply this, you take a soft cloth and you just spread a light amount of wax onto the painting. And since wax repels water, it's going to provide a barrier to make them waterproof. That sounds pretty good. So why haven't I done that to these? There's a couple reasons. One, I don't really think it's worth the time. These have been stored pretty haphazardly and they look exactly the same as they did the year before, so I don't really see a point in taking the time to do it. The second is that this wax medium, it does change the colors a little bit. Sometimes it can actually deepen them and make them a little bit prettier, but other times it kind of changes the colors that you had, and I want these to be nice and bright, not kind of deep and rich. And the third reason is a little more complicated. This is a gouache painting I did that I sealed with this, and it's done a great job of sealing it. And after it cured, the wax has dried pretty solid, but it still has a slight amount of tack to it, which means that it's a magnet for dust and pet hair. And I really like how bright and white these are, and if I took the time to put the wax on there, it would only be a matter of time before my black dog's hair was stuck all over them. All in all, that's a really long way to say, do you need to seal watercolor paintings? Not necessarily. Most of the time, the best protectant for your watercolor paintings is going to be the sheet of glass in the frame that you put them in. They're surprisingly durable if they're not exposed to water, but if you are worried about them getting wet, something like this wax medium will help to preserve them.